Alright, so I'm going through my old stuff and I found this Xbox One controller and I thought, why don't I give new life to this? I really don't have as much time now to play the Xbox, but at least I can use this for my robotics projects. So from last video you saw that we started building a RC car with a Raspberry Pi. We actually bought it from Amazon and we modified the whole thing to be able to control it with Python. And everything is ready. I mean, the hardware is connected, all of the electronic boards are connected. We just need to actually program it with Python. So for this video, I'm gonna focus on the software side. Let's see how we can design the architecture for this and how we're gonna be taking inputs from an Xbox controller to program the car. So let's start building. So that's the RC car that we developed in the first video. If you want to see how we did that, you can access the link in the description below. But for this video, I'm going to actually focus on the software side of things only. We're going to be using Python to build it because we can get something working very quickly. I usually like to approach these problems by looking at a high-level overview. I want to see which components we have, which software do we need to develop, and really don't think about details at this point in time. So I just want to see that we're going to have two main sides to this project. There's going to be the code that's running on the RC car, on the Raspberry Pi, and that's going to be code running on a laptop. In this case, I'm going to be calling it a client side. So if you look at the client side, that's going to be my laptop. We're going to be connecting the Xbox controller to it via Bluetooth. And whenever a button is pressed on this Xbox controller, I'm going to be monitoring with my laptop. And if anything happens, I'm going to be sending a message wirelessly to the RC car. The RC car is going to be listening for messages. Whenever a button is pressed, it's going to get that message from my laptop and then it's going to move the motors accordingly. It's going to turn and either go straight or backwards. The way I like to approach this is to actually see each individual part and try to write a minimal script to see something going, just to get something to work. So we can start, for example, with the Xbox controller. And I just did some research. For example, I found this library called Pygame. And I just wrote a minimal script. What's the minimum things necessary to get something going? So you can see here the script that I wrote, and pretty much this is gonna be reading events from the Xbox controller. So if I press, for example, the right trigger here, you can see that these values are ranging from -1 to 1. You can also see here that it was a joystick event as opposed to a button event. And at the same time, there's this axis value. The axis value is simply the name of which joystick I'm using. The next step I want to look at is the communication between the laptop and the Raspberry Pi. For that, we're going to be using WebSockets, which is a communication protocol that's very fast and allows communication in both directions. So we're going to be running code on the Raspberry Pi as well as on my laptop, and then we need to separate that. On the Raspberry Pi, we're going to be running a WebSocket server. We're going to be using UVI Corn as well as the Fast API Python library. On the client side, that will be my laptop. We're just going to be using the WebSockets library to be sending messages to the Raspberry Pi. You can see here on my screen there are two scripts, one that's running on the Raspberry Pi, another one that's running on my laptop. And just as a test, I'm going to be sending a hello world message to the Raspberry Pi from my laptop. And you can see here the Raspberry Pi receives that message and responds to it. I came outside here to film the remainder of this video. And one thing I noticed here in Europe is that everything is very crowded. I feel like there's not as much space as in the US, for example. And there's always someone walking around or talking, so it's kind of difficult to film videos on the street like this as opposed to the US, but I think I finally find somewhere here where it's a bit quieter. And anyways, alright, so the next step for this video is going to be to control the motors, and for that we're going to be using the Adafruit Circuit Python library together with our servo driver board that we showed in the last video. And for that, we have this minimal script here that you can see on the screen. And I'm just going to gradually increase the PWM levels that's going to the motor driver. And you can see here that the RC car is gradually increasing its speed. We're going to be using the same board and the same library to be controlling the steering of the car by moving the servo motors. One important thing that I wanted to mention is that at home, I was testing the car using my home network. If I wanted to use the car outside of my home, then I'll need both devices to be connected to the same network. And for that, I took my smartphone and created a hotspot. I'll be putting a link to my GitHub on the description below so you can look on how I integrated all of these individual components. We can finally put all of the components together and finally test the car. So you can see here, I can turn the wheels by moving the joysticks and also press the triggers to move it forwards and backwards, and the car responds perfectly. So that's pretty much what I have for this video. If you stayed to the end, thanks very much. You can subscribe to the channel because we're gonna be putting more and more features to this RC car. Next step, we're gonna be putting a camera to it and also building more and more cool robotics projects. So see you next time, and thank you.